Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and today we're going to go over 3 reasons why everybody needs a living trust. Now, I put in order to create a legacy because I'm going to say that we should all strive to create something that lasts beyond us. But besides that, why do we all need to have a living trust? And there's going to be lawyers out there that are going to weigh in and say, no, it's not appropriate for everybody. You know, if somebody doesn't have a big estate or anything else, I'll be like, no. And I'll explain it really, really simply. Right, right away, right now. All right, number one. The number one reason is because assets, they're not yours. They're not ours. We don't get to have them. When we pass away, they go on to somebody else, right? So they're not ours. We're not taking them with us. There's no such thing as a U-Haul attached to a hearse that we get to take everything with us when we pass away. So we're stewards of that during our lifetime. If you want to appropriately steward something, then you need to be doing it during your life, at the end of your life, and after your life, which means we get narrowed down to certain types of documents that'll help us accomplish that. So when I hear people say, oh, just get a will, you got to understand that a will is only effective when you pass away. So I just said, hey, we have things that are during our lifetime, at the end of our lifetime, and after we pass. We need to address that. In fact, I'm just going to put that as number 2. It is not about passing. It is not about just passing away. It is about creating vehicles during your lifetime so you have advocates for yourself for your health. You have advocates for yourself for your finances. Nowadays, so many folks are being affected by Alzheimer's, just people getting older. We saw during COVID, people that needed somebody to represent them and be their advocate in the hospital at times because there was so much craziness going on that you had do not resuscitate orders, and unless you had documentation, somebody could push back on that. You may have lost loved ones yourself. As a result, we want to make sure that we have designated individuals to act on our behalf. And I'm sorry, wills will not do it. You have to have, and I'm just going to say living trust because it's a complete estate plan during your life. At the end of your life, that is the end of life wishes. It's called a living will. And it says, do I want extraordinary measures? Do I want to be kept alive if I'm brain dead? Things like that. Do I want to continue to have, to be forced to stay alive when I'm in excruciating pain and I'm not able to do things? You need to have advocates so that they can communicate with the doctors and professionals and advocate for what you want. I've done this actually as a court-appointed guardian, and you end up really having to push sometimes because there's going to be a narrative that either a hospital or a doctor may believe in it. And it's your job to make sure that your wishes are known and that you have somebody designated to advocate for you so that they can do it. And if you don't do it in writing, it's going to end up being a mess. And I've seen untold bad situations. So think of this: fiance, car accident, the future husband who ended up passing away ends up in the hospital, not next of kin. She was the fiancée. She was not his wife. Denied access, did not get to talk to him the last time he was able to, and ended up losing her fiancé. And it was because of a lack of a document. If there had been something there designating her so that she could have come in and communicated, that would have made a big difference in her life. It ended up, the gentleman passed away, but it was too late, too little too late. We didn't have documentation. She didn't have documentation that allowed her to do that. It's really sad. And then the last thing, and this is going to, like some of you guys are going to immediately, this is going to resonate with you. Giving can be worse. I'm just going to say than not giving. A lot of times we will give something to somebody who's not in a place in their life where they are in a position to actually handle the wealth. There's statistics that show that of like lottery winners who get windfalls, they keep about 16 cents on the dollar and they have a higher likelihood of having bankruptcies 5 years after after they have that windfall. There's plenty of studies on it. Money Magazine did one about how many generations an estate's going to is going to last. There's one where they talk about the first generation makes it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation blows it. Like, there's all these anecdotes out there because of something that we all know is true, which is if you give money to somebody and it doesn't have a plan or they're not prepared for it, you could do them much more harm. One of my business partners, he had a friend when he was in college. The friend's parents passed away, or the last parent he had passed away during college and left an inheritance, and the guy dropped out of school, did not continue on with his education, which would have been with the same as my partner, which he became an attorney. And the guy ended up really suffering as a result. About 10 years later, was misguided, didn't know what to do. It had burned through most of the money, and now had changed the trajectory of his life when it was most important because of an inheritance. It could be worse for people. So you need to actually think about what you are doing and giving it to somebody. Maybe it's drugs or alcohol. Maybe it's just immaturity. Maybe they just don't know anything to do with money. The worst thing you could do is burden that person with a bunch of money that's going to make them make bad decisions without providing them with counselors. And one of the easiest things you could do is have a trustee of a trust that says, hey, make sure maybe there's some conditions. They've graduated from college, maybe certain ages, maybe that they've met certain milestones. Or it could just be that you say, hey, the money is there for health, education, maintenance, and support. In other words, nobody's going out and buying a Lamborghini with that money. But if they need it because they have a medical situation or they're going to school or they just need support, not to go on vacation every week, but because they need to have a roof over their head, the money is there. But you don't just give it to them. And this is where you start creating a legacy. This is where you can future trip and you can start thinking about, what does my legacy look like 200 years from now? And some of you guys are going to immediately reject that. I'm just going to say, play along with me. What does your estate look like 200 years from now? Because you can create something that's going to last 200 years from now. And before you immediately poo-poo it, here's an easy one. I can create a living trust. And I could say that that money is for my beneficiaries, for my descendants, so my blood of my blood, adopted, after born, etc., that it's for my heirs or my descendants going on multiple generations. And I want them to travel outside of the United States. What I think is really important is that people get out and experience other cultures. So I want to gift that to them. Fill in the blank. Maybe it's I want them to be able to go to school, or I want them to be able to start a business, whatever. You can designate funds just for that. And now some of you guys are immediately saying, but I have no money. You have a life. You have your body. Insure it, and you can make the trust the beneficiary so that, again, I can go out and get a term policy for $250,000 and have a pile of money flow in there that could be there for an education trust to help my future generations go to school, if that's important to you. Whatever is important to you, just think about it. Hey, I want to create this. Maybe it's, hey, I really believe in giving, so I'm going to create a foundation, a memorial foundation that my estate's going to go into, and then my relatives get to be the ones that decide which organizations they're going to give. You could give guidance, and you could say, here's the type of organizations I want to benefit. Maybe it's your church, maybe it's different, maybe it's, hey, maybe you're an animal lover and it's pet causes, whatever. They're going to have to give away, in the case of a foundation, 5% a year of its assets. And yes, they can get paid, but more importantly, they're going to learn how to be good stewards, and you're going to continue to benefit those organizations. Let me give you a good example of one of these that you've all probably know the name, Hershey. Milton Hershey and his wife created a charitable foundation back in the early, I think it was 1905. I think he passed away about 30 years later. They didn't have kids, but that foundation exists to this day with over $13 billion in it. Not because they started with $1 billion. They started with millions of dollars and the business that he created, but it does hospital, museum, it has a school, has all these things, and they just have good stewards over that wealth that's continued to compound and grow. Because when you start thinking about 200 years, you got a lot of compounding going on, right? You could actually grow a huge amount. You plant the seed. and let it grow by creating a legacy. So that's a huge reason of why I want a living trust versus anything else, right? There is no alternative. You could do a will only effective upon passing, and it is not about passing away that we are creating. We need something that gives us advocates during our lifetime to make sure that our estate doesn't just get burned up, doesn't get misused. We also want to make sure we avoid disputes. If you want to destroy wealth, one of the great ways to do it is to end up in court, right? If you want to be wealthy, stay out of court. And that includes when you pass away and your heirs end up going to courts, because probates are a magnet. You have money, you have grief, you have lawyers. What could go wrong? Just about everything. That's where you end up litigating over the Christmas plates and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars destroying yourselves. That's what ends up happening with heirs. So we want to avoid that. How do you avoid that with a living trust? You put a provision that says if you contest, you're disinherited. Plus, you're keeping it out of the courtroom. You're not inviting a dispute that a probate creates. A probate is literally asking all the creditors and anybody who's a beneficiary or potential beneficiary to come in there and wage their grievance. We don't want that. What we want is to have a private family legacy created, and keep it private, out of the public eye, keep it away from the public records, keep it away from court if you can. I know there's going to be some assets that maybe you have to go through and do a low asset probate, or maybe there's a car or something you have to transfer, which can oftentimes be done outside of probate as well. But we want to do things to the extent that we can privately and keep it within your family. And so those are the three big reasons for me as to why somebody should have a living trust. And there is no equal alternative. You need to have a living trust that is an estate plan. And I go to battle with practitioners all the time on this. It's like, I'm sorry, the alternatives are way too expensive. I've seen small estates get burned up quickly. My family got to experience that, where it wasn't worth it to even open the probate versus the assets that were left that somebody wanted to go to specific individuals because the lawyers were so expensive. It gets eaten up. We don't want that. We want to keep it private. We want to make sure that we are thoughtful in the way that we handle our matters, including during our lifetime, at the end of our life, and then carrying forward. And you can do, if you want, in a living trust, you could just say distribute it. These are great kids. I raised them really well. But you've just kicked the problem to them. They're going to be the ones that are now responsible for future generations. We could do it ourselves. You could do it yourself. And by the way, guys, if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. If you know anybody who could benefit from this information, please share it. Thanks, guys.